Hi everyone, my name's Declan McGlynn and today we are super excited because we've got The Revenge at the Point Blank studio. So this is your live setup / studio setup, because I was going to actually ask you what's the difference, but very little.
Yeah, they're both kind of interweaved now. I used to play years ago with Paul here, and I just felt that there was a lot of change between live and studio and switching about, and over the years sort of came to the conclusion that having a sort of slightly modular setup where you can take out a drum machine, or at home the TR-8 is a 909, and it just makes it easier to make that transition between studio and live.
You play with someone else, right? You play with Paul McGee, who's come down to join us today as well. How's it going, man?
Cheers.
Welcome. So, what's your role when you're playing together on stage?
Bit of vocal samples, a bit of soft synth using the Juno soft synth.
Oh, right, cool. So you have a push as well?
Yes.
Right. And you don't play any live keys or anything like that?
I do a little bit, yes.
Oh, right, cool.
Not very well, but I'll give it a shot. And occasional air horn when the moment.
Yes, of course. Those are white noise, air horns.
Yes, it's kind of all this sort of effects stuff and all this sort of ethereal sort of things and some
Yeah,
sort
yeah.
of pads and key sort of bits, that it's good to just have that extra layer on top
Yeah,
of it. I'm kind
absolutely.
of dealing with the groove stuff. Initially when we started live stuff, which was probably, 15 years ago or something, but it was, like an MPC, some samplers, S1000, S2000, like a TR-808, so you were taking out, like a flight case full of like these heavy
Whiskey
samplers.
as well,
They were all
yeah.
local gigs, it wasn't like international, so when the technology got to like Ableton level and laptops, it became, we kind of went down that route for a bit. When Ableton came along, it was such an amazing change, in the way that things like Logic and that, it felt it was so complicated. It was just I'd studied sound engineering, but I just felt there was so much in it that I was never going to use. When Ableton came along, it had the session view and it had the arrangement view, and it just felt like it was like the clarity in between, live and studio can coexist. It was liberating in a lot of ways. So now my studio's like all standing, at home, because it's like music for your body really. So it's like you want to feel it. Yeah, it's not so easy to do that in a chair, I don't think sometimes, Or certainly not in the context of where you're going to be playing it either, really, in a club. I take the same mixer with me, for most gigs, but so again, you've got that sort of continuity. You can walk into the club and feel relaxed. I'm not an overly like extrovert person, so you kind of want to just feel that you can go in and do your thing and react with the stuff that you've got to hand without thinking I've got lots of options here or too much choice. For me, it was intimidating, I suppose.
Yeah. And before we just dive in and take a look at how this works, I want to ask you about your bass and kicks, because every single time I play one of your tracks, or just having conversations with my friends about The Revenge, they always go, "Oh, the kick drums, they're amazing." What is your secret?
Probably the older stuff was probably sampled. I mean, most of it, I guess, would be. But again, it's just, I think, layering, it was that thing of usually EQ. I think that's the sort of key to everything, and balance, you can use compression and all these things, which I do use, but it's just balance and EQ, finding a sort of window for, that sub and for the kick.
So Ableton's running the show in terms of MIDI and audio.
It's stripped down in usually like 4 elements. So on the mixer, you've got the drums on 1, you've got the bass on 2, which is the Moog, 3 is the Tetra there, and 4 is this Vermona filter here, which is just, it could be a sample or a tone or just something like a sampled element usually, so that's on 4. And they're all sort of interchangeable. generally I have it that way so that when you're playing, you know that if I want to cut the drums I could take all out at 1, or if I need to cut the bass I can come out at 2. So everything's essentially coming from the equipment in Ableton for side chaining or compression or anything else, and then it's coming back into the mixer via those channels.
So this particular track, maybe we can talk a little bit about it and hear some of it.
Yeah, so say with this one, I mean, this is like on 4 here, so we've got the Vermona. This is like the, this is just a sample here. Just a little tone thing that I'd played in, just like one tone, and I'd played it in and just recorded it, so it's just a little loop. And on the TR8, what I'm doing is sending out the mid-tom here. Is just, it could be any pattern, but it just happens to be this one here. And that's triggering, sending into the audio trigger on both of these filters, so I can, you know, obviously cut the decay down based on what's getting played on these on this mid-tom pattern. And again, this is sending returns coming to the Moog Voyager over here, so you can sort of modulate things rhythmically. Again, if that was a sample, so this is a tone here, but say we had something that's more like a sample, what have I got here? Something like... So those are the sort of trigger points of where that's sort of gating or triggering that. I can sort of open it up, so you're kind of just getting rhythmical variations within that one sort of sample. It's the same with the drum loop. You're only getting a tiny little, using the delay of the Moog Voyager there. And again, for sort of breaks, or if you're taking something right down, you know, you could use that. And obviously it's sort of getting side chained there, you know, so, but yeah.
And it's the way you work in the studio as well?
Yeah, the same thing. So usually I'll just have a jam in the same way, so you'll just play in a bass line or something. And I've got the 909 set up in the house, but it's like, you know, that kick in that frequency range is kind of all you need to take care of that sort of punch in a club or something, you know, or in your track, you know. So there was a sort of time where, you know, I'd go searching for like the perfect kick or something, and you end up looking for hours through a whole bunch of sort of plugins. Now it'll be like a drum loop, so something, you know, there might be, I've got a couple of different ones here, but this is just one that I did on I've got like a 606 at home, so just, you know, had it off a track that I did and just like drop it into Ableton, and that'll just be able to be the basis for it. Again, all of these elements, I mean, say the kick is side chaining with the bass and the all everything actually is kind of getting sidechained by the kick here.
Yeah.
So not hugely, but enough. You know, and with the Voyager, there's a sine wave channel on Ableton, which is the last channel on here, which is basically taking care of the sort of lower frequency stuff underneath the kick and underneath.
So the Voyager's also playing like a 4 beats a bar tone, basically.
Well, the Voyager's not playing that, but like the MIDI on here is like playing, you know, a bass part, which is obviously the Voyager's playing, and then the sine wave on Ableton's just sort of taking care of that low end, because a lot of the bass sounds are quite, you know, quite different as well. So you're not always getting that real low end, and in this way you can kind of create that window, you know, which we was sort of saying earlier with the EQ. So you're just sort of you're EQing things almost in Ableton's EQing those things, where this mixer can obviously then take care of bigger changes when you're playing live, you know, with the isolator or things. You can still have that sort of but
you can kind of hear the sine now,
yeah, and you know, it's quite low, I think, on this track. It's quite a low frequency there, but
so would you recommend doing that if you're playing out live, to double up your
well,
sub?
I think it's more like you're covering your arse probably a little bit in some ways, because you know that in a club scenario, like, it's something that you can't hear that sine wave necessarily, and if the monitors aren't so good on stage, and you know, something with DJing you've got a little bit more knowledge of, because you know the track that you're playing and you've probably listened to it a lot, but sort of live as well, you need to do a sound check, and then when you get on stage and you've got the monitors, and unless you've got a sub there as well, which isn't always the case, you know, it's definitely something that we request, but it's not always there, and sometimes it's not always, you're quite rushed getting a sound check and all this stuff, and this way at least you know that when that bass kicks back in, when I pull this channel up, I know that it's going to have the punch, you know. With the Moog, I can still really mutate that right out and put the resonance up where it obviously loses a lot of that sub.
Yeah.
But I still know that it's coming through. It's coming through the system.
And then you can re-isolate that sub as well.
Yeah.
Mixer,
yeah, exactly. So we can, you know, I could take all of that out or whatever, or. And again, with these sort of levels, it's like going back to using, you know, a mixer like this. I mean, actually, in some ways, a fader setup is probably quite handy as well. Like, you know that you've got the top, and you can go. I can just push it back up. Some elements are quieter, you know, some are not. So you're really kind of, you're sort of just riding it along. You go, well, oh, that should be a bit louder. So you know, you've got some security that you know that sonically that the elements are in place, but within that you've still got the freedom to really manipulate everything right out to, not distortion, but to the edge of what you need it to be, but it still sounds live, you know, it's still of the moment, you know.
And what would be the number one thing you would say to someone who was thinking of, because so many people right now are taking their hardware synths and stuff on the road and moving away from laptops. I mean, what would be your advice to someone who was thinking of doing that?
I think it's like what turns you on, basically. I've seen people playing off laptops and it's been amazing. I mean, one of the first people in Glasgow, I think, that I ever saw was at Optimal. I was with Paul, and it was like Acufin was playing, and that was before I'd seen anybody playing with a laptop, and that was 15 years ago or something, maybe, I don't know. And it's a pain in the arse taking all this stuff with you. I mean, really, just setting up, I mean, especially at the end of the night when you've had a few beers and you're taking everything down.
Yeah, and everyone's going to the after party.
Yeah, and someone's trying to help you pack up and go, that's fine, just get that in there, you know, and you're just like, no, don't put that in there.